Actually, yeah, Nabila, you there? Nabila Ramdani, journalist and commentator who's in our London News Centre. As we look at these pictures, the fireworks going off over Tahrir Square as they often do, and then the pro-Morsi camp in Nasser City. I don't know if you heard us talking, Shireen, there about Mohamed ElBaradei. Obviously, there's any number of questions about why he's appointed. You know, I would wonder why he'd want to take the job as well. What do you think is, you know, taking on such a role at such a time? It's a huge thing to do.
Well, absolutely, but I think that the idea behind his appointment is to try and bring about consensus in the country and to end the divisions. He, of course, represents the liberals, the left wings, and also the youth in a coalition, a party called the National Salvation Front. And the idea is to perhaps for him to represent those who feel have been excluded or deprived representation under the presidency of Mohamed Morsi. But the reality is that he has never been a popular figure at home, really. He's a familiar face to the West because of his involvement in the UN nuclear watchdog agency, for example. He's, of course, a Nobel Peace Prize winner as well. But it has to be said that when he initially presented himself as a candidate for the presidential elections last year, he polled in single digits before he pulled out of the race. And interestingly, one of the reasons why, or the main reason, in fact, that he offered to pull out of the race, but it's because he cited concerns about the undemocratic way the military was handling the transition. So it's highly ironical that he should step in now as a prime minister in the wake of a military coup against the democratically elected president. And the sentiment in Egypt is that far from being a consensual figure, he will bring about further divisions, precisely because the military who's backing him effectively is carrying out a crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood, depriving them of their effectively of their democratic mandate, rounding them up, arresting them, and also considering and threatening to dissolve the organization altogether.
Look, Nabila, regardless of the personalities involved here, and I know they are obviously big personalities and they matter in this story, regardless of those, is the Egyptian public maybe just expecting too much? A year of quote-unquote democracy, Mohamed Morsi in power, you know, and days after that 1 year passed, he's rolled in what is effectively a military coup. Now Mohamed ElBaradei comes in, there will be all these expectations upon him or upon anyone who comes in. Forgive the cliche, but democracy takes time.
Well, absolutely, and I think whoever, you know, had been elected last year, the first free and fair elections in Egypt in decades, it has to be said again, was always going to have, you know, an immense task on his hands. Egypt is a massive country, 80 million people living there. It has huge structural and indeed economic problems. 1 in 4 Egyptians live below the poverty line. There is an endemic problem on unemployment. The cost of living is also, you know, one of the main problems that the Egyptians complain about. And indeed, you know, 30 years of dictatorship, 60 years of military rule, endemic problems of corruption as well, violence, crimes on the street. So, you know, it will be an immense task for anyone. And there's a sense that perhaps the Egyptian people, you know, capitalizing on the spirit of the Arab Spring, which is all about fixing those problems, were perhaps a bit impatient and didn't give President Morsi a chance to succeed. You know, if you look at mandates about democratically elected leaders around the world, including, you know, the US or Britain, for example, you know, it's not a given that any politician can achieve the slightest, you know, of his or her program within a year. It often takes many years to achieve anything.
Nabila Ramdani has been with us in London. We thank you for sticking around and talking through the situation in Egypt as it stands.